Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Waz, aka Wazzy Lambre, and I'm joined as always by my brother on the west side of Los Angeles. What's going on, Nando?
Just celebrating the Rams' victory in the Super Bowl because as a resident of Los Angeles, I have, of course, now a lifelong Rams fan. Rams number one, baby. You know, just me and my other Angelino friends just loving the Rams
Hey,
all day.
Dan Marino and Duper are rolling over in their graves, okay?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know who those
All
people are anymore.
right. Well, listen, on today's show, we had to talk about Hillary's surprise merch drop because it's just too good, too perfect, too on brand, too on the nose, too hilarious for us not to talk about here on the Woke Bros, just considering what the Woke Bros
Yeah.
brand has been over the years. So we're gonna get into Hillary Clinton's merch drop. There's a war allegedly brewing in the Ukraine between the Ukrainian nationalists and Russia. Of course, you know the U.S. has their involvement in their say because can't be a conflict going on around the world without the U.S. having some strong position for whatever reason, American interest, blah 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 blah. Who even freaking knows? We'll get into that. But first, man, you know, the Super Bowl, as Nando mentioned at the top of the hour, just happened here in Los Angeles. The Rams defeated the Cincinnati Bengals. What was the score? 23-20.
Yeah.
Cooper Cup, White Rice ended up winning the MVP of the thing. Aaron Donald probably deserved it, but it was a dope game. I enjoyed it. It came down to the last second. But of course, you know, with most Super Bowls, everybody loves to, you know, check out the commercials because, of course, Nando, this is the most watched TV product in America every single season. So it's a chance for advertisers to throw out their biggest, best, whatever type of ideas. And, you know, basically what we got was nostalgia for the 90s, which, like, I mean, Gen Xers, man, I know you guys are now the ones in the C suites and you're in charge of everything now, but can we please just get over the 90s already? Like, get over it. Seriously. And so a lot of 90s nostalgia. Of course, a lot of people notice a lot of crypto content in there. And every single car manufacturers finally decided that we should stop using the black gook and use battery powered cars. And so a lot of, electric cars. But Nando, what was your takeaway from, Super Bowl commercials?
Well, I thought it was just a fascinating snapshot of what America is in 2022, right? It was just a perfect encapsulation in that it's like there's no hope for the future. All we need is to, invest in crypto and crypto will just buy off every single celebrity in the world. I mean, come on. I know you're a big Curb Your Enthusiasm fan. It must have hurt to see Larry David shilling for fucking crypto.
They must have
Um,
signed such a fat check, dude.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like I mean, it's amazing because Larry David is like 100
100
millionaire,
millionaire.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's chilling for crypto. It's like, does he need $10 million more? 20? Like, how much money could they pay
Yeah.
him to really make a meaningful difference in his life? But yeah,
LeBron James being a great company man and doing a really weird commercial for crypto.com, which
dude,
is now
Matt
owns the
Damon
naming
has
rights.
one.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane. And then like, yeah, I mean, you talk about the 90s nostalgia, and it's not just 90s nostalgia, it's just the fact that everything has to be a reboot, a sequel, like a,
Mhm.
a whole commercial was like basically a new mini episode of Austin Powers.
Mhm.
There was a whole episode that was a new episode, there was a whole commercial that was a new episode of The Cable Guy, which like wasn't even like a huge hit in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was considered like a disappointment for Jim Carrey. Um and then there was the Sopranos ad, which like hurt my heart to think that David Chase like cut a freaking commercial, and it's just like everyone's cashing out while right before the world burns. Like, just get as much just get as much money as possible before everything goes to shit. And that's America these days, like that there is just no hope for the future, so just cash out as quickly as you can. traffic on old things. Like there's nothing new. Nothing new can come. Like there's no new culture. Yeah, it was a little sad in that sense, but I did enjoy the game and I did enjoy the halftime show. I know you're a big 50 Cent fan,
Of
but I
course.
tweeted out that I've been seeing him at Gold's Gym. Like I've been working out. You know, I work out at
Okay.
Gold's Gym, and I've been seeing 50 Cent with like a huge entourage like around him, like he's
Of
benching, you know, and
course.
there's like 8 dudes around him, you know, like egging him on. It's fucking amazing. So yeah, I mean, you know, maybe he could have used a little bit more
When you get up
workout.
in age, when you're getting up there in age, the sacrifices you have to make to look good start to get harder and harder. So I sympathize with 50, not just because he's one of my rap heroes and Queen's idols, and I will go to my deathbed loving 50 Cent for just his cultural impact, just what he's meant. Period. I'll always love 50, but come on, I'm not gonna make fun of the guy because he's not looking svelte at his
Yeah,
age. The guy's in his
yeah.
40s. Give him a break, guys.
Yeah. Give him a break. I thought, you know, I'm not like I can't say that I'm like a, you know, I can intellectually analyze hip hop or rap. Like I enjoy
Mhm.
it on a purely like, oh, I like this song or I don't like this song,
Yeah,
but I can't tell if
right.
like, you know, like sometimes like the critics, I'll be like, I don't, you know, I don't understand. But dude,
Right.
Kendrick Lamar was fucking awesome. Like that,
Yes.
I thought that performance was amazing. And then, you know, like the dancing, the fucking, I thought it was amazing. And then Dr. Dre, I just appreciate that he didn't dub He sang it. He fucking rapped it himself. And it
Still
sounded
not
amazing.
and he kept the line still not loving police
Yeah.
in the freaking rap
Yeah.
on the Super Bowl halftime
Yeah.
show. That's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. Of
Roger
course.
Goodell with company man Russell Wilson sitting next to him must have been squirming, you know,
Oh
in
God.
his seat. That was
Uh,
that was a hilarious image too.
Well, that's a topic for another day. But yeah, I enjoyed the halftime show. Of course, like I grew up listening to Eminem, Mary J. Blige. These are people that are Dr. Dre and Snoop. This goes without saying. Like these people are huge parts of my upbringing, especially culturally and just informing my own taste. And Dre just seemed like he was having a great time. Like he looked
Yeah,
genuinely happy to be
yeah, he did.
soaking in that moment. Like, wow, like
Yeah,
we're doing the freaking Super Bowl halftime show. We went from NWA, they trying to ban NWA, to now
yeah.
Dr. Dre saying still not loving the police on the Super Bowl halftime show. It's just funny how that goes. But of course, Dr. Dre himself is a billionaire damn near, right? Like he
Yeah,
is part of the oligarchy class, period. Even though he's not some guy who's like starting some huge business corporation employing a bunch of people. It's just that he has fuck you money and he's part of the club. And it
yeah.
just so happens that he has this unimpeachable music legacy and career. And so he gets to do cool stuff like curse out the cops on on America's biggest TV show. That's just crazy.
Yeah. 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 There was a moment where it cut back because like, it started with Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, right? And then it kind of went to the other ones. It went to Mary J. Blige and Eminem, 50 Cent, Kendrick Lamar, and then kind of went back to Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. And it cuts back to when they're both standing on top of that like bus thing, that was like apartment thing, whatever that they were doing. And they were just like looking like, can you believe like we're up here fucking doing this? I got like that vibe, you know, like those
Yeah.
guys who've been famous for as long as
Bro.
I've been alive, basically.
Snoop beat a murder charge.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
This
amazing.
these things
I
happen.
always forgot. People like don't think about that anymore, but it's like amazing. That was like a huge thing in the '90s.
Yes.
And they were just like looking at each other like, "Can you believe like we're doing this? This is fucking awesome," you know. And it was pretty fucking awesome. I thought. Like yeah, I was
Yeah, I
genuinely
I thoroughly enjoyed the Super Bowl halftime show. I mean, like the Super Bowl as a cultural just moment. Yeah, it doesn't get bigger than that here in this country, and they know they got to deliver spectacle like in the midst of a sporting event, and they did a good job. Shouts to the people that produced it. Shouts to Jay-Z, man. They paid that man to curate this stuff for them, and he knocked it out the park with this one. I thought the Shakira joint with J-Lo was amazing 2 years ago. I loved every second of it. So yeah, Hove is doing his good job of being, putting a black face on NFL bullshit, which whatever. And curating freaking musical experiences for these cats.
yeah. No, it was great. I mean, I liked the weekend one last year. I liked the
Oh,
weekend.
I enjoyed it too. I'm a weekend fan.
Yeah, I'm a Weekend fan too. I like the Weekend, and the Prince one was amazing. I remember this one. This one, like, people I think will remember for a long time. You know, like I think that
It
definitely
was
like
just so
it definitely made a mark.
surreal, honestly.
Yeah,
Like those specific people, again, like 50 Cent, like a dude who we're talking about a felon. We're talking about a guy who
yeah,
almost died from being shot 9 times. Like one of the biggest gangster rappers there ever was. Now he's a freaking TV mogul. He's put out basically like 4 or 5 of the biggest entities in the history of the Stars Network. Right? This guy's like, I don't even know. He's like the David E. Kelly of Stars now. You know, the Dick Wolf of
yeah,
Stars. And to see his career go where it is, it's just incredible. And so, you know, we go from America's basically only real export at this point, which is pop culture and culture, to its other
yeah.
ridiculous export, which is war and pillaging and trauma and just violence. And of course, we got to go to Ukraine, which it's been kind of basically like 6 weeks of this stuff bubbling up. Of course, I like to listen to American Prestige with Danny Bessner. And basically, like I said, for a month and a half to 2 months, they've been like, all right, there's been this incremental thing in Ukraine, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Then it was like this next section, like, ultimately, I don't think it's a big deal. And it's like, all right, this is kind of ridiculous, but I don't think this is going to be a thing. And to the point where now, if you go on the Wall Street Journal, excuse me, not Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, which is the only mainstream lib stuff that I read, basically. Its front page is just Ukraine in crisis. It's crazy over there, Nando. And we can't trust Putin's troop withdrawal. And Biden is making Putin quiver in his boots. And they fucking love this
They love it.
so much, dude. Nothing gets their dicks harder than potential war. And it's so obvious with this Ukraine thing, which again, to me, then like, and please enlighten me. Why would the United States give a fuck about what's going on between Ukraine and Russia? Like, meaning like this, like Russia or China, they're global powers, whatever. If we went to war with Canada or Mexico, like, they wouldn't give a fuck about that. Like,
Right.
why do we care about the Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah. Well, because the United States always has to have a bad guy to basically justify its giant military
Yeah,
spend.
to orient its
And
Mhm.
for a while it's been Putin, right? I mean, they did the terrorism thing for a while. It was the Soviet Union forever, like the Soviet Union
Yeah.
was the big bad
That was
forever.
50 years.
Yeah, that was like 50 years. And then
Terrorism
in the
lasted what,
80s,
like 15.
yeah. And then in the 80s, they started like finding new ones like Libya. Like that's why the Libyans were the bad guys in Back to the Future and stuff. And Saddam Hussein. And there's they always gotta have a bad guy. And then after 9/11, for a while, it was like, jihadi terrorists. But that kind of like no one cares about them anymore.
Done.
So we need a new
Done.
one. And so like
Terrorism is done, bro.
yeah,
Like complete, like the extent to which it's done doesn't even make sense when you consider how all-consuming coverage and worry about what these crazy Muslims are gonna do to us. And it's just like we don't even think about it, talk about it anymore. It's just fine. Hell, we've even ramped down to racism against random brown people in this country. Like we don't even do that anymore. It's
yeah.
amazing.
No, it's the one that they've been trying. So Russia has been for the last 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
starting with like the 2016 election, especially in the liberal establishment, media, national security, think tank influencers, and things like that. It's been, Putin is like the most evil guy in the world,
Right.
and there's like, and then in like recent, like in like the past 2 years or so, they've tried to make China the other kind of like big bad, but they can't really go all the way with China because there's so many interlocked business interests,
You
like
can't do
um
it. To fight
yeah,
China is to fight ourselves. Like
totally,
there's no way to do it. And because, and again, for the folks at home, whenever they're doing all this crazy shit abroad, if you watch like the Sunday shows, like Meet the Press and Face the Nation and shit like that, and they have these serious looking guys, in these suits and cufflinks, or they have the generals with all their, freaking regalia on. What they'll say is, American interests abroad, not you and I's interests as Americans or the citizenry at large, our interests. No, like a few dudes business interests in other countries where they are exploiting other countries' resources to their own benefits that never come back to America.
Yeah.
It's not like when
Yeah.
they're exploiting nickel mines, we get cheap nickel in America. It's
Yeah.
it's not our interest. It's business interests. And that's why, like, the idea of making China a fucking threat, like, that's the definition of spiting your nose.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if we're always worried about American interests abroad, there is no big, like, I don't even think there can be a bigger American interest as far as business wise than just China. So
Yeah.
like they want to play footsie with it, but they really can't. So they gotta go, oh, Russia, here's the big thing we need to do.
Yeah. I mean, the size of the Russian economy is smaller than Italy's. So you can get an idea of, it's like not it's
Insane.
and it's fairly isolated, that there's not like a huge amount of American corporations who have like business in Russia. It's not a big market for American goods or anything like that, or even like American culture. Like, it's not like they're huge NBA fans in Russia, like the way they are in China and things like that. So, yeah, it's easier. It's a little easier for the American national security establishment to make Russia the big bad. Now, the thing to understand about Ukraine is that, like, first of all, it gets their dick hard, like you said, because they like to think of themselves like they're playing Risk. That Seinfeld episode where they play Risk and Kramer's like, the Ukraine is weak. You can't protect the Ukraine. Like they think they're playing fucking Risk with like, but Ukraine is a very large country, very complex country in that, like, basically half the country considers themselves Russian and half the country considers themselves Ukrainian. Like the eastern half of Ukraine, they speak Russian, and in the western half, they speak a language called Ukrainian. So, like, there are internal divisions within Ukraine. It's not like they're just like this one, blanket mass of people who all think the same, even though that's how we imagine things here in America. So when they talk about like these spheres of influence, it's not like a total, absolutely out of nowhere thing. Like, there are Russians there that people in Russia consider like their brethren, for lack of a better term. And I think that the important thing to understand when it comes to quote unquote Russian aggression in that part of the world is that Russia is really concerned about the expansion of NATO to the east. So NATO is a military alliance between the United States and Europe, essentially Western Europe, that was built in like during the Cold War to confront the Soviet Union, right? Or to protect Europe against a Soviet invasion. What the Russians say is like, okay, that's fine. You just can't expand that military alliance to our border because in the last 150 years, Napoleon invaded Russia, the Kaiser invaded Russia in World War One, and then Hitler invaded Russia in World War II, killing 22 million Russians.
Yep. Could you imagine if that happened on American soil? We would never hear the end of it. Like,
imagine if Russia offered like a military alliance to Mexico.
Yeah,
we'd have a fucking panic attack. Which is what NATO has been doing steadily for the last 20 or 30 years, has been offering NATO membership to states closer and closer to the Russian border. And there have been rumblings that they're going to offer NATO membership to Ukraine, which is right on the fucking border. And they're like, no, you can't do that. Like, you just can't do that. Like, and if you strip away like your American kind of jersey for a second, yeah, they got a point. Like, they got a fucking point.
It's easy to understand.
And I'm not saying like Putin is like a very bad man. Of course, he's a very bad man. Like, and the Russian state is quite authoritarian. Like, it's not a fully democratic state. I am not convinced that Putin isn't popular though within Russia. Putin stabilized the country when he took over in 1999. It's important to understand that when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991,
it was fucked over there.
it was fucked over there, and it was fucked by Americans. You know, like the Clinton administration sent over what they called the Harvard Boys, Larry Summers, and guys like Jeffrey Sachs, like these famous guys that are still around these days, to essentially rape the Russian economy and privatize everything. From in the 2 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Russia experienced the largest drop in life expectancy in human history. The privatization from the Soviet state to what they called privatized capitalism or whatever caused the largest drop in life expectancy in recorded history. It was a total disaster. The country was in absolute chaos for a decade, essentially. And then Putin came in 1991 and kind of stabilized the situation. And like life in Russia is relatively normal these days. Like it's fine, like if you're a guy in Moscow, whatever. Like obviously there's people who are persecuted and there's like all kinds, there's not like a free press and, like
and your ass to get killed or poisoned and
yeah.
In the
Totally.
UK, he'll go find
if you're
your
like
ass in the UK.
if you're like a bread maker in Moscow, like your life is relatively stable in a country that has been, besieged by all kinds of instability and death and despair and all that kind of thing for over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to like understand these things a little bit, like when you're seeing something like this, and with the and my thing on the Ukraine front is that like I don't think anything meaningful is gonna happen. Like Putin's not suicidal. He's not gonna invade Ukraine, given like how fucking insane. Like it's true that he did take over the Crimea. Crimea is like a much more complicated thing. It is like, the people in Crimea are very happy to be part of Russia, but I just don't see like a full-scale war happening over this, like an invasion, like, tanks rolling across the fucking wheat fields of outside of Kiev. Like it's just not going to happen. But the media, CNN, New York Times, all these things, like they're frothing at the mouth for it. Like they almost want it to happen, Like how often have you been seeing headlines or whatever? It's like Putin plans invasion at 2:30 p.m. like tomorrow, and then it just like doesn't happen. And it's like they almost want it to happen, and that's like what drives me crazy. It's like there is no push towards diplomacy, talks, de-escalation. It's always like escalate, escalate, escalate to the absolute max, and I don't know. Like it makes me despair a little bit. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anything is gonna happen. This guy's drinking
margarita.
I love that.
My girlfriend Michelle makes a mean margarita. You gotta try.
Yes, Michelle, fantastic cook and apparently a mixologist as well. I didn't realize that. Also, incredible curator of wines. Okay, if you're having a party and you want to have an eclectic, tasty bevy of wine choices, Michelle is incredible at it, bar none. But yeah, I mean, anything that you read from people who are paying attention for real and aren't just like, New York Times, again, just consider the sources, right? New York Times, who very giddily and happily ran PR for the Bush administration to get us into Iraq, which was obviously the biggest disaster since Vietnam. They love it. This is their track record. This is what they love. This is what they thrive on. And again, like the deep state people, the freaking commanders, they're all just like they need a reason to exist. You know what I mean? This is not fucking, pre-World War I Europe where everybody is just like, all right, man, every single one of our fucking countries could be invaded at any single time. We need to be at the ready and get this thing popping. Come on, man. Nobody's coming over here. We literally have to go to the Ukraine to find a conflict, bro. Like that's just insane to me. That in a part of the world that really, Nando said it, isolated from U.S. interests. There's no presence. There's no reason for us to give two shits about any of this, but for the fact that Putin needs to be held in check because, America's the savior and he's a bully. And it's just like, God, it's so pathetic. And I can't possibly believe that any normal American sees this and is like, yeah, the U.S. should definitely be at war with Russia. Nobody thinks that. That shows you how outside of the democratic process these decisions sort of happen, right? Like they know, like, Americans, they're not even part of this thing. We get to do this shit with impunity, with zero consequences. We don't need to have a coherent logic. We can just be cowboys and it'll be completely fine. And then, we'll add another 100 billion to the military budget and nobody will even freaking notice next year. Anyway, we move on from the Ukraine to I'm sorry, this is my favorite political story in a minute. And I do want to thank Nando for bringing it to my attention, because last week, man, hold on, let me see if I can pull up this tweet. Let me see if, oh yes, here it is. Here it is. Last week, February 11th at 6:54 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Hillary Clinton let off this tweet from the Hillary Clinton account. And it goes like this, quote, "Just in time for Galentine's Day. And the news that Trump was flushing documents down White House toilets, a limited edition hat is in the Onward Together store now." Link to the Onward store again, just to break down this tweet, Nando. Galentine's Day. This is something that single women do on Valentine's Day. If you don't have a significant other, you hang out with your homegirls and you guys enjoy yourselves and love on each other and do that whole thing. Hillary Clinton, you're married, so your married ass is condescending to all the single women out there, which is just like Hillary Clinton being tone deaf. Who could have ever foreseen this coming? Secondly, which needs to be mentioned, Hillary Clinton, although we can readily admit that the email thing got blown out of proportion during the campaign because New York Times and all the mainstream media people felt like Trump had all of these like legitimate scandals and they had to treat all of your scandals with the equal weight of like this dude defrauding people for hundreds of millions of dollars in loans. That was out of whack. But let's be clear. Putting your emails and doing government business on your private servers was shady. Okay, that was shady. You could
almost as shady as flushing documents down the toilet.
Exactly. It's almost as shady as that. That's the tone deaf part about all of this. It's like, well, my subversion of the rules. They made a big deal out of it, but I wasn't. No, motherfucker, you both were subverting the fucking rules. You could have just used the .gov email and kept it pushing. No, you did some fucking shady shit and you wanted to do it on your private joint. We get it because .gov would have been so easy to capture. And so you wanted to do this private thing. What you did was wrong. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's not like you did something normal or right and you got, whatever, killed. Like, what you did was wrong. So now the idea that you're gonna drop merch, Nando, on a hat that reads, "But her emails, though." But her emails, with just no irony and no self-reflection, just like, you really think that you were wronged. It's just insane. And then, of course, the kicker, the best part of all of it, is the photoshopping stock photo of the model in this pic, who's like, she's like tatted up, got the pink hair. It's just like, oh, so fucking perfect.
Dude, I went on to the Onward Together website to see the other merch they have. I actually just bought you right now while you were just talking. I bought you a But Her Emails hat, a But Her Emails pin, and then a But Her Emails COVID mask.
Oh my
God. I'm just imagining the type of person that wears a But Her Emails COVID mask.
Sick.
And it's that's the best type of guy.
The most deluded, sickest in the head liberal that you will ever meet in your life. Like, who's the audience for this? Who's the target? Who's the market for this?
Just the Hillary dead enders, man. There's a few out there, like we forget that they have their weekly meetings where they just talk about, like, can you believe like what James Comey did to me and for depriving me of Hillary. They go to the Javits Center and they try to break the glass ceiling. And shit like that. I mean, it's just remarkable. Like you said, the tone deafness, but also just the reveling in her loss.
Yeah, that's the sickest, saddest, most pathetic part of it.
Yeah, she lost to Trump, and like, yeah, like we do this segment because we think it's funny and we think it's fun, and because politics is over, and we can't like talk about like anything that's gonna the so we got to bash Hillary a little bit, but yeah, I mean it's just remarkable that she celebrates kind of her loss in
You
a
lost
way,
to a buffoon.
she
You
lost to
did
fucking
that.
Trump.
You
Yeah,
lost to Donald fucking Trump in a presidential election. That's embarrassing, bro. And
yeah,
you keep bringing it up. And again, a lot of this shit was self-imposed. And I talked about this on the Twitch stream the other day. Where I'm just like, yo, y'all kept talking like Hillary Clinton. You worked in the State Department, meaning you have firsthand knowledge of actual election interference, of
yeah,
actual putting your finger on the scale of a foreign election, of a
yeah,
foreign coup, like of actual US involvement in tipping the scales in the balance of power. You like actually, you have like literally, you know where the bodies are buried.
yeah,
If you would come out and start bitching about what the Russians did to you on Facebook,
yeah.
it's just insane to me. She's
Yeah.
insane, bro.
Yeah. I just sent you a screenshot on your text
Mhm.
of something that they're selling on the Hillary in the Hillary store, and it's a like a onesie for a baby. That's a pantsuit, like a
Oh
Hillary
my
pantsuit
god. Hold on.
onesie for your
Let me
baby.
hold that up to the
Uh,
screen for y'all.
yeah, that's some good shit. Oh man, it's
That's
good
it.
stuff. I'm
That
buying you
is
all of this shit. I'm just
this
gonna
is
send it all to your
insane.
house.
This
Yeah,
is insane. But her emails, COVID mask,
yeah,
right in time for the mandates to be lifted, by the way.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it's
yeah,
just, and again, Hillary Clinton, one of the most prominent people in the Democratic Party. I was just reading today in the Times about, Cuomo's lieutenant governor. I forget the lady's name, Hochul or Hockley or whatever her name is.
yeah,
It looks like she's about to win the Democratic Party's nomination, which means that she's going to be the governor of New York when the elections happen. Because once you're the Democratic pick, you get shoehorned in. When she receives the nomination, because she's going to be the first woman mayor of New York, Hillary Clinton's going to give the keynote, or she's going to speak at
That's
this
like the
woman's
that,
coronation.
that's the kiss of death. She might even lose the election to a Republican.
Whatever the
Oh,
Midas
man.
touches, Hillary Clinton has the opposite of that.
Yeah,
Man, this is just it's just pathetic. And again, a lot of it, not to get all psychoanalytical here, but her whole life was leading up to 2016. Dealing with Bill Clinton's philandering, the public embarrassment, the shame, just the ridicule, the Vince Foster, the whole all of it was leading up to 2016, which she just knew she had in the bag. She just knew it.
yeah,
She knew it was destiny that she would become Hillary Rodham Clinton, the first woman president of the
mhm,
free world. And she lost to the biggest buffoon in the history of life. You can't, so, you can't even imagine the psychic cost that comes with that type of embarrassment. But goddamn, let it go, Hillary. Oh, it's
yeah,
ugly. You're embarrassing yourself.
yeah. That was fun. It's fun. It's fun. Like this is fun. There's a, we like listen. Don't get it twisted. Anyone listening out there, we don't like Republicans, right? They're just not as
No,
fun
of
to make
course
fun of
not.
as the libs. The libs are so much easier to make fun of. Like the libs make me want to take their lunch money. Like it's like they like tickle the bully gene that I have inside of me. You know what I mean? I'm a super nice guy, but like sometimes, I have like a bully gene that I have to suppress. And the libs just make me want to like, yeah, steal their lunch money and put their head in the toilet and flush it. So yeah, it's always fun to make fun of them.
Anyway, fantastic stuff, man. Of course, that's gonna do our show for today. Make sure you're subscribed to every single Count the Dings product. Make sure you're checking out the Friday mailbag, Cinephobe, everything that Count the Dings has to offer. Become a Patreon, patreon.com/Count the Dings. That's about a cup of coffee from Starbucks a month to support what we do over here at CTD. We'll see you guys next week. We're out of here. Peace.